and welcome back to another video. So in this video I'm going to be reviewing my experience with Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn. If you don't know, Final Fantasy XIV is the MMO of the Final Fantasy franchise. It's had 3 expansions. I think it's been out since 2014, something like that. It's had 3 expansions, and it's just got a new one that's been announced, Endwalker, coming out at the end of this year. I do have a little bit of a history with Final Fantasy XIV. I played it back probably in around 2014 on the PlayStation 4. I got to about level 30, I think, and then I just sort of dropped off and stopped playing it. I don't really know why I stopped playing it back then, because I actually was really enjoying it, but for some reason, I guess life got in the way and I stopped playing it. And I've tried to play it again a couple of times over the last few years, and I haven't actually made it through A Realm Reborn until now. I'm going to talk about this a bit later, but they have condensed the content that was stopping me from enjoying A Realm Reborn, and I'm now on the cusp of getting to Stormblood, which is the expansion after Heaven's Ward. So I can tell you that I'm really enjoying the game at the moment. I'm really enjoying the game. But we're going to go into what I think of the base game of Realm Reborn. Okay, so how this is going to work is I'm going to talk about 4 things that I liked, 4 things that I didn't quite like, and a couple of things that some people will like and some people won't like, depending on who you are. But I think it's a good thing to make you aware of them if you are wanting to try this game. Okay, so the first major positive for A Realm Reborn is that you can try it completely for free. There's no initial buying of the box price. There's no monthly subscription. You can play A Realm Reborn for free, and as I said, there's no monthly sub, so you don't have to pay for it at any point. Okay. Also, you can play Heaven's Ward, which is the first expansion, for free as well. They're included in the free trial. Now, there are some restrictions of the free trial, but they're not that much. It's not going to ruin your experience too badly. So if you're thinking about trying this game, you really don't have a lot to lose, just other than down your hard drive space and some time. So if you are thinking about trying it, now's the best time to give it a go, I think. It's a very generous trial. It's literally hundreds of hours of content which you're just being given for free. So it's very generous from Square Enix. And yeah, it's great. It's a positive. I like it. Next one. Now, something that isn't a positive, something that is a negative, that a lot of people have talked about before, but in the initial stages of the gameplay is very slow, and maybe if you're coming from other MMOs, particularly action combat MMOs, or even WoW, the global cooldown is basically the crux of the issue. The global cooldown in Final Fantasy is 2.5 seconds, which is a lot longer than any other game. Now, the reason why it's 2.5 seconds is because when you get later into the game, you use a lot of your abilities, okay? And it doesn't feel slow when you get later into the game. I've been told that it does get a lot better and a lot more fun when you begin to flesh out your class. However, first impressions do matter, and I don't know if there's any way that they can make it better for those initial players who are playing through it. But the positive side to this slower progression through your class is that it does introduce you to the mechanics of your class, but still, it's just something that you have to bear in mind. I think the way that the game is set up, it's not something that can change in the early game, but if you come in knowing that it's a little bit slow to begin with, and it gets a lot better and a lot quicker later, I think you'll enjoy it a lot more. My second point, and definitely a positive point, is the community based around Final Fantasy XIV. I've not experienced any sort of toxicity or negativity at all in my hours and hours of playing through the game. As I said at the start, I'm nearly through the first expansion and I've not experienced any negativity once. And I've done raids, and I've done loads of instances in dungeons, and I've not experienced anything at all. And they're all pug groups as well. Final Fantasy XIV has some great great features in it, like the Novice network, which is something you get put in immediately when you start the game. So in your little chat box, you'll see some green text. You're in the Novice network, which is basically means that you are in a chat group with everybody else who has just started the game, okay? So you can ask questions and you can be in a community of people who are learning like you. There are also mentors to the game that are there. You can ask questions at any point and they can help you as well. And also, this is a great feature. You'll notice when you log into the game for the first time that next to your name you have a little sprout symbol. That's because you're a sprout, and it tells everyone in the game that you are new. People will not expect you as a sprout to know absolutely everything about the game. They're not going to expect you to know all of the mechanics, and they're going to help you get through these instances. So I think that's a great thing to put in off the bat, basically. I think that's a great feature. There is definitely a mindset in this game, different to other games that I've played, where the veterans and the people who've been playing this game for a long time really want new people to come into the game. And they are really willing and accommodating to help people who come in my anecdotal experience, which I've not experienced pretty much in any other game. The community here wants more people here. So if maybe you've had a bad experience in another MMO, maybe you're kind of anxious about getting involved in an online community, this isn't one that you need to be anxious about. This is a good place to be, and I highly recommend you give it a go. Number 2, negative. Okay, so there are some graphical glitches in Realm Reborn, and I think maybe other expansions as well. Particularly when you're looking like the foliage and the bushes, they'll flicker a bit. From what I understand, and I don't understand much about games and how they're made, but from what I understand, it's something to do, it's like an engine issue with the game, and it's nothing that you can do about it. So I remember when I started the game and I sort of saw these flickering like bits of leaves and stuff, and I was like, well, what is going on? How can I fix this? Is it my computer? It's not my computer, it's not your computer, it's not you, it's just the game. I've been told that it does get better as you go through into the new expansions, and to be fair to the game, we do have to remember that Final Fantasy XIV, a base game, and Heaven's Ward, the first expansion, I think that was it, were available on the PlayStation 3, so we do have to give it a little bit of a break in terms of its graphical quality. You do eventually tune it out as you're walking around, so if you see that, try to ignore it. It gets better, and it's not your system, it's the game. Positive number 3 is the Hall of the Novice. Okay, the Hall of the Novice is a brilliant feature, and this should feature in every MMO, in my opinion. It's essentially a series of quests that teaches you how to play your class and your role in group content. So it essentially says that if you basically start out and you're playing a tank role, it will teach you how to properly crowd control and use your threat abilities in a simulated kind of like dungeon scenario, so you can go up into the dungeons with other players and feel more confident about how to play your role. Basically, if you've never done an MMO before, if you've never played an MMO before, there's plenty of ways that Final Fantasy XIV teaches you how the PvE system and how dungeons and instances and tanking and healing and things like that work before you even have to go into a group content with other players. In my personal experience playing with pug groups, everyone seems to know what they're doing, and I'm not playing with experienced players. Sometimes I play with other sprouts, other new people, and they know what they're doing as well, and everyone seems competent. And I think that could be because they've played MMOs before, but it could be because they've also done the Hall of the Novice, and they've also done other stuff like guild hests as well, which are very small kind of group content simulated scenarios which teach you how to play your role. This is a brilliant feature. If you are nervous about playing group content in an MMO, make sure you do this stuff first, because it will teach you what to do and it will help you be more confident in those scenarios. But great feature, absolutely love it. Should be in every MMO. Right, negative number 3. So the content in 5.3, I believe, in patch 5.3 was revamped. Okay. So before, there was a lot more filler content in Realm Reborn, and they culled a lot of it basically, and they kind of trimmed the fat. In my opinion, they could trim more fat. I think there's still a lot of quests that you don't need, and I think Square Enix have come to from the perspective of, if there's a cutscene or if it's part of the main story quest, it has to be in it. And I think you could cut some of that stuff out, because there's some stuff where you're really not doing anything that's important to the overarching narrative. You're not really doing anything that's teaching you how to play. You're kind of just playing through the content, and I think you could still cut more of this out. I think they need to do what WoW did with Shadowlands, which is getting from 1 to 50 should take you 15 hours or 20 hours. I don't know how that's obviously going to be possible because of all the trials and the story progression and all that. Maybe 15 hours is far too ambitious, but it needs to be as fast as it possibly can be to get to Heavensward, because that's when the content really really begins to ramp up in Heavensward. And as someone who's nearly finished Heavensward, it really begins to ramp up and it gets good. So get your new players to the content that is really, really good as fast as possible, basically. Cut more out or make it quicker, less requirements to get out of a Realm Reborn. What they did is good, but I still think they could do more, personally. Right, number 4, positive. So this is something I absolutely love, and it's something that I've really, really missed from WoW. Class quests. Why did they ever stop being a thing in other MMOs? I'm talking about WoW, but in other MMOs, it really makes you feel more connected to your class. It makes you buy into the class fantasy a lot more, and also it's not just quests about how to learn your ability. It's a subplot to the main story about your class. It's really good. It's really interesting. It's really good for from an RP perspective, and it really gets into the lore of how and why your class is what it is, basically. So I'm playing a Dragoon at the moment, and I'm also playing through Heavensward at the moment. So the class fantasy is just like off the charts for me at the moment, and it's fantastic. And I just think it's just an obvious feature to have in a game. And I don't know why other MMOs have dropped it. It's great, and I love it, and I'm really glad it's part of the game. Number 4, the final negative that I want to talk about is that it can be quite cutscene heavy at times, and there are some very long cutscenes in this game. This is something I've never seen before. There's a point in the game where you are warned that this cutscene is going to be a long time, and do you have time to watch it before you start watching it? I've never seen that before. It was a brilliant cutscene. Some people know exactly what I'm talking about. It was phenomenal, but it was a long cutscene. Particularly in the content, or I'm going to call it a content bridge between A Realm Reborn and Heavensward, I found it very cutscene heavy. It kind of felt like the content bridge is filler content essentially for the people who were playing the game back then, so they had stuff to do before Heavensward came out. Now, as part of the main story quest, you also have to play through all of this content to get to Heavensward, and at certain points it does. I mean, you have to bear in mind when they released this filler content, they released it in kind of stages, so it didn't feel as long for the people at the time, but it feels quite long for us as we're going through all of it at once. And there are points where you're going from quest, cutscene, flyover, cutscene, next person, cutscene, and it's just a bit laborious. It's a bit that maybe that could be cut down. I do think, even though they have cut a lot of the game down, I still think they could cut more down, in my personal opinion. But I do think if you go in with the mindset that the beginning is a little bit slow, but it does get good, and it does get good. I'm telling you, people aren't bullshitting you. It does get good. Then you'll probably enjoy it. Now, we're going to go into the plus and minuses. So some people are going to find this as positives, and some people are going to find this negatives, depending on who you are. But I do think it's important to mention these factors of the game before you try it, okay? So, number one, plus and minus. Group content is mandatory in the game. You cannot go through the game without playing with other people. One positive is, as I said before, every player becomes competent at the game. Every player knows kind of what they're doing when it comes to group content, which is a really good thing. It also promotes player interaction. You could meet people, you can meet new friends through playing in group content. However, some people may not like this because it is intimidating to play with online with other people. Some people get a bit anxious before they play with groups of other people, and I can totally sympathise with that. All I can say to that is that there's a ton of tutorials with the Hall of the Novice and the guild hests and things like that, and the Novice network, where you can feel confident and build up your confidence before you go into any group content with other players. Also, as I said, the community is great. Everyone's going to look after you, and you can always, if you want to, use the Novice network to group up with players who are also new, so you can all kind of fumble your way through the content together and you don't feel like you're wasting anybody's time, which I think is the main anxiety contributor to a lot of people, is that you don't want to waste people's time. You're not wasting people's time, and people are going to be patient with you. So bear in mind that you do have to do group content to get through the main story quest, to get through the expansions, to get through the end game content. You have to do it. I will say, a lot of it's going to look intimidating. It's nowhere near as hard as you think it is, so just give it a go, and if you're worried, just say that you're new and people will look after you. My last plus and minus I want to talk about is a quest line that's in that content bridge between A Realm Reborn and Heaven's Ward. It's the Crystal Tower quest line. The Crystal Tower quest line is essentially a series of quests and raids, like 20, I can't remember when it plays, it was about 20 player raids that are now mandatory for you to complete before you get to Heaven's Ward. They did not used to be mandatory, but they are now. The minus to this is it's yet more content that you have to do before you can get to Heaven's Ward. And especially when a lot of people like myself are saying that Heaven's Ward is such a step up from A Realm Reborn, you're desperate to get there and it's more stuff to get through. But the positive is that I actually really enjoyed this set of quests, and I do think it's definitely worth doing. Now, I know a lot of you are going to have heard me just say you have to do some raids, and you're going to possibly poop yourself. Don't worry, they're a piece of piss. That you can barrel through these blindfolded. Basically, the power creep has made these set of raids ridiculously easy, so you don't need to worry about them at all. And the reason why they've now made this set of side quests mandatory for new players is because this content is now relevant in the latest patch. So I'm not going to give away any spoilers to this sort of side quest thing that you do, but basically at the end of it, you say, or the story says, we're going to have to stop here and we are going to come back to this later, and that later is now. So they have actually come back to this. So I think that's really cool that they are tying up these loose ends and we get to go back and finish off this story. So the plus is that it's a good story. The minus is that it's yet more content to do before you get out of A Realm Reborn. So that is my sort of review of A Realm Reborn. I know I haven't spoken about the story. I don't want to talk about the story because I want you to experience the story yourself. If there's any points that you agreed with me or even disagreed with me, let me know in the comments below. And if there's anything that I am actually factually incorrect about, let me know. I'll pin the comment. I'm okay with being wrong. Have any questions about the game, let me know and I'll make sure that I get back to you in the comments. So I've got a lot more Final Fantasy XIV content on the way. It's going to be really useful, especially for you new players out there. So make sure that you subscribe. If you like this video, give it a like, click the bell, follow my socials, follow my Twitch especially. We've got a lot of fun stuff happening there. And I will see you in the next one. See you later. Bye-bye.